Ladies and gentlemen, something massive just broke loose in America's biggest city, and Bill Maher, of all people, is the one who finally said the quiet part out loud. On national television, the lifelong liberal comedian just admitted what New Yorkers have been whispering for years and what conservatives have been shouting from the rooftops. The rich, the middle class, and the productive backbone of New York are fleeing, and Mamdani's victory may have just lit the fuse. Because overnight, the election of an openly socialist congressman wasn't just a political shock. No, this was a financial earthquake. Wall Street phones started ringing. Luxury realtors in Palm Beach and Brickell, Miami, they're saying that they're being inundated. And meanwhile, pundits downplayed it as panic or post-election emotion. Bill Maher, he did something rare. He gave viewers the brutal truth. New York isn't losing a few snowbirds. It's losing its future. In fact, this isn't speculation anymore. New York has already hemorrhaged 125,000 residents and nearly $14 billion in income. And now, the people with the means to leave, they're packing their bags even faster, sprinting toward the one state that promises sunshine, safety, and zero income tax under President Donald J. Trump's booming 2025 economy. Drop a comment down below. Let me know if you know which state people are moving from New York into. Now, tonight, we're breaking down exactly what Bill Maher said, what he exposed, why Mamdani's victory sent shockwaves through high-income earners, and how Florida, a former punchline to coastal elites, has suddenly become America's new Wall Street. Strap in, folks. This is the story that they prayed you'd never notice. Hit the like button and subscribe. I want to go ahead and start with the moment that made this entire conversation explode online. Bill Maher sitting on his own show, looking straight into the camera and admitting that high-income earners are fleeing blue states because the math simply just doesn't work anymore. And the shock wasn't what he said, it was who said it. This is a man who spent decades mocking conservatives, suddenly pointing at New York, California, Illinois, and saying, look, people aren't leaving because they want a better ocean view. They're leaving because the taxes are punishing. Now, Bill Maher described it plainly. The cost of living squeezes the middle class, the taxes squeeze the upper class, and then the political climate squeezes everyone else. And so the audience, normally clapping for every progressive idea, they sat frozen thinking about it because deep down, they actually knew that he was right. In fact, this was the spark. This was the moment liberal America's own court jester confirmed that the kingdom is collapsing under its own policies. And look, before we move into the next part of the story, let's address the bigger picture behind what Bill Maher just admitted, because when you hear somebody on national television say that the rich are fleeing, it raises the real question. If the people with the most resources are preparing for uncertainty, shouldn't everyone else be paying attention too? I mean, the truth is simple. Nobody knows what's coming next. Elections shift, spending bills explode, and global tensions rise overnight. And here's the one rule that never fails. Uncertainty punishes the unprepared. This is exactly why I partner with Noble Gold Investments. They help Americans protect their retirement with real physical assets, gold and silver that don't depend on politics, policies, or promises. And once people understand how it works, they always say the same thing. That makes sense. So if you're watching everything happening right now and thinking to yourself, I need to protect myself, you're not alone. Most people who see what's coming are calling the phone number at the bottom of your screen right there. That phone number is 877-646-5347, or they're visiting RonYatesGold.com to get their free wealth protection kit. You can't control Washington. You can't control New York politics, but you can control your wealth, and right now, that's the smartest move anyone can make. But if Bill Maher lit the match, Zohran Mamdani, he poured gasoline on the entire pile. Now, his election in Queens wasn't just a political win. This was a signal flare fired into the sky all over New York City. In fact, a Democratic socialist promising wealth taxes, public ownership theories, and anti-capitalistic rhetoric, and a proudly redistributive agenda in one of the world's financial capitals. And the wealthy didn't wait for his first vote. No, they reacted immediately, because whether Mamdani ends up passing any new taxes or not is really irrelevant. The psychology changed overnight. Suddenly, hedge fund managers, doctors, small business owners, and even well-paid middle-class professionals asked themselves one very simple question. If this is who New Yorkers are electing, well, what comes next? Now, the fear wasn't the man. The fear was the direction. Mamdani's win told the affluent the city isn't drifting left. It's accelerating toward policies that target wealth as a liability, not as a contributor. Now, before we move into the next part of today's story, let me say something that's very important, because a lot of people who are watching right now, they aren't just thinking about big cities collapsing or your taxes skyrocketing. They're thinking about your family, your security, whether you've made the decisions that protect the people who depend on you. And a wise decision blesses more than just you. Fix your Medicare plan and your whole family feels safer. It's true. This is why I partnered with Chapter. They strengthen your Medicare coverage so that your loved ones don't have to worry about you or scramble to cover the gaps. One viewer wrote me and said, "My kids told me that they slept better after I called." And this is what peace of mind sounds like. Now, if you want that same feeling, that same security, most people are making decisions that bless their family. They're calling the phone number down below, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. That phone number again is 909-563-8279. And of course, it is a totally free call, totally free service for the Ron Yates community. And here's what another viewer told me. So this one came from Cecil Frith. He said, "Thanks for the chapter link. I am now saving $166 a month. When all you have for income is Social Security, $166 is a sweet raise. Thanks, Buck." All right, guys, let's get back to this. So the moment that Mamdani's victory was confirmed, something happened that the mainstream media didn't expect, and they didn't want to report it either. Real estate agents from Palm Beach to Brickell, Miami started quietly whispering the same thing. Our phones are exploding. Buyers from Manhattan, Westchester, Brooklyn, Staten Island, Queens, they're suddenly asking the same questions. What is available? How fast can I close? How do I establish residency? These are all questions that folks from New York are asking Florida real estate agents because they're looking to leave. And so these weren't window shoppers. These were cash buyers. These are hedge fund partners, finance executives, and comfortable professionals who are one tax hike away from breaking out of New York City. In Naples, Florida, one broker said that she received more calls in 48 hours after Mamdani's win than she normally gets in 2 months. Another agent in Palm Beach told a local outlet that there's panic buying right now. New Yorkers think that the city just declared war on high-income earners. Now, this wasn't gradual. It wasn't emotional. This was a strategic flight, triggered instantly. And now here's where Bill Maher's warning hits like a hammer. The exodus didn't start with Mamdani. In fact, it didn't start with 2025 either. It didn't start with Trump returning to the White House. New York was already bleeding residents long before this movement. In fact, IRS data shows from 2019 to 2024, more than 125,000 New Yorkers packed up and left, and they didn't scatter randomly. The overwhelming majority poured straight into Florida, Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, Broward County, and Collier. Now, this wasn't a drift. This was a migration path that was so consistent that analysts literally called it the Manhattan to Miami pipeline. Maher tied this directly to Mamdani's election. I mean, the argument wasn't that one congressman drove 125,000 people out. It's that his victory confirmed the fears of everyone who stayed. The message was clear. If you didn't leave before, you better leave now, because the city's politics aren't swinging back. Now, here's the part that should terrify every official in New York City, because it's not just people leaving, it's income. Nearly $14 billion in adjusted gross income has already vanished from the city's tax base, according to IRS migration data and New York Post analysis. So that money didn't evaporate. It didn't go offshore. It didn't pause for a vacation. It relocated directly into Florida's economy. Now, imagine the consequences here. Every dollar that leaves New York City, this is a dollar that no longer pays for schools, transit, sanitation, policing, social programs, and pensions. So New York City already runs some of the highest operational costs of any municipality in the entire nation. So losing $14 billion from the tax base isn't a budget wound. This is a budget hemorrhage. Now, here's the twist that Bill Maher hammered home. These aren't minimum wage earners that are fleeing. These are high bracket taxpayers. In fact, the exact people a blue state budget depends on to survive. In a post-Mamdani climate, that drain accelerates. In fact, if New York was losing the rich, Florida wasn't just accepting them. Florida was courting them. Long before Mamdani's election shocked the 5 boroughs, Palm Beach and Miami had quietly become what analysts now call Wall Street South. So under President Trump's economic environment, paired with Florida's DeSantis-era pro-business posture, entire hedge funds uprooted, private equity firms opened secondary headquarters, financial advisors, bankers, quant teams, and analysts traded midtown commutes for Biscayne Bay views and a zero income tax lifestyle. But Mamdani's win accelerated the shift. Financial thinkers, they saw it not as isolated progressive victory, but more as a symbol. The nation's top financial center was embracing policies openly hostile to capital. Meanwhile, in Florida, developers launched new luxury towers, Brickell boomed, and Palm Beach realtors, they just couldn't keep up. Florida didn't just become an escape hatch. It became a new gravitational center for American finance. And when Bill Maher said people aren't moving for the view, they're moving to keep more of their money, he wasn't being funny here. He was being brutally accurate, because in New York, the tax burden isn't a single problem. It's a stacked avalanche. First, you pay some of the highest state income taxes in America. Then the moment you cross into the 5 boroughs, you get slapped with New York City income taxes on top of that. You want to buy a home? Oh, here comes the the mansion tax. Own a home? Say hello to crushing property taxes, even in modest neighborhoods. And hanging over all of it are proposals for wealth taxes, millionaire taxes, and expanded surtaxes, many pushed by the same progressive wing that celebrated Mamdani into office. Now, for high-income earners, the math stopped working. For middle-class professionals, the squeeze became unbearable. And when people finally did the numbers, they realized something shocking. They could live better and keep more money almost anywhere else other than New York City. And so now came the contrast with Florida. This is a state that practically rolls out a red carpet for wealth creators and working professionals alike. Zero state income tax. Zero state income tax in Florida, guys. Lower property taxes, no city level income tax, and a regulatory environment that's built around the idea that success should not be punished. It should be welcomed. Now, this is the counteroffer that captured New Yorkers' attention. Why grind to survive a shoebox apartment when you can live in a waterfront high-rise with more space, better weather, and a tax bill that doesn't feel like a ransom note? Under President Trump's 2025 economic climate, businesses relocating to red states receive even friendlier incentives. Check this out. Developers across Florida, from Palm Beach to Miami to Naples, they're all building these ultra-luxury condo towers specifically for incoming executives from NYC and Chicago. For many fleeing blue states, it wasn't just an upgrade. This was an economic liberation, and Florida knew exactly how to market it. And one of the most fascinating and troubling migration behaviors that were emerging after Mamdani's win, this is what analysts are calling the double life strategy. This isn't the stereotype of someone packing a rental truck and abandoning New York overnight. No, this is a far more calculated migration. Wealthy New Yorkers, especially those in finance, are now quietly purchasing homes in Florida while still maintaining a small New York footprint. Why? Residency. You don't have to give up your Manhattan office or your Brooklyn brownstone to escape New York taxes. All you need to do is to establish Florida as your primary residence. Now, this strategy surged immediately after Mamdani's victory. Luxury apartments, luxury agents in Palm Beach, they reported buyers saying, "I'm not ready to leave fully, but I need the option." That single sentence says everything. It means the exodus isn't just emotional panic. It's financial positioning, a hedge against a political environment that's signaling hostility toward wealth and entrepreneurship. Now, New York doesn't just lose residents, it lost confidence. Now, to really understand why Maher's comments detonated across the internet, you have to understand what Mamdani represents to high-income earners and small business owners. His platform wasn't just progressive, it was openly anti-capitalist. He championed ideas like rent cancellation and public ownership of major industries, aggressive new taxes on top earners, and rhetoric that framed wealth as a societal problem and not an opportunity. Now, to working professionals, this sounded ideological, right? I mean, that's the way I interpreted it. To wealthy residents and financial firms, it sounds like economic sabotage. Figures like Ken Griffin, one of the sharpest financial minds in America, immediately interpreted Mamdani's rise as a sign that New York's political culture was turning hostile toward capital formation itself. And when someone like Ken Griffin moves billions of dollars and hundreds of jobs to Florida, people take notice. Bill Maher put it plainly. They know what this ideology means, and that's why they're leaving. It wasn't fear-mongering. It was a sober analysis from someone who's seen this movie before. Now, here's where the political stakes truly intensify. It's 2025, and President Donald J. Trump has been crystal clear about one thing. There will be no federal bailout for mismanaged blue states. Not New York, not California, not Illinois. Under Trump's second administration, the message from Washington is unmistakable. States must fix their own fiscal messes, and those that punish successes should not expect federal relief when the wealthy leave. Meanwhile, companies relocating to red states like Florida and Texas and Tennessee, they're receiving regulatory green lights and a more favorable business environment. In fact, Trump has frequently praised this migration as proof that red state economics works and blue state economics fail. Now, for New York officials that are hoping Washington would stabilize the tax base or slow down the exodus, the writing is now on the wall. Help is not coming. In fact, this accelerates the urgency because if high-income earners continue heading south, New York can't rely on federal support to plug the holes. So here's the final truth that Bill Maher hinted at, and this is what the media desperately avoids. It's not just the rich that's fleeing, it's the working class. It's the nurses, it's the teachers, the engineers, the families who once believed New York was the land of opportunity. Well, let's just say that they're leaving because the quality of life has deteriorated dramatically. Crime perception, failing transit systems, overcrowded schools, skyrocketing rent, decaying infrastructure, and progressive experiments, that all sounds good in theory, but collapse under real-world pressure. So Bill Maher pointed out that the middle class in New York City, or NYC, is being squeezed from both ends, punished financially while simultaneously feeling unprotected and unheard. Who wants to pay for that, right? And when a place becomes too expensive to survive and too ideological to challenge, well, people do what humans have always done. They migrate. Florida isn't just gaining millionaires, they're gaining families who simply want safety, stability, better weather, and a chance to breathe. This is why the exodus won't slow down. Mamdani's win didn't start it, it just simply confirmed the direction that New York is heading in. Share this video with someone who's not yet aware of what's happening. Hit the like button, subscribe. We'll see you next time.